Welcome to Hestia's Muse, where we tend to the sacred fires of the heart, exploring spiritual principles woven into the fabric of astrology, tarot, and the wheel of the year. Have you ever found comfort in the cycles of the moon, or sought guidance in the symbolism of tarot cards? I'm Liliana Blackstar, and I will be your guide in this journey of self-discovery. Join me in this space where the study of astrology becomes an act of self-care and a pathway to self-actualization. It is Gemini season, and we're looking at the Gemini cards. And so to switch things up for Gemini season, I have brought a guest onto the show. So I have with me N'Mier Laveau. And go ahead and introduce yourself, Nim.
Hello, everyone. My name is N'Mier Laveau. I am a Wiccan High Priestess and a longtime big fan, big friend of Liliana. I've been
Uh-oh, we lost the connection there. We lost your
the
connection. If you can, oh, okay. We lost the connection with you for just a second, so
I'll do a
we
fast
didn't hear
restart.
you.
My name is N'Mier Laveau. Y'all can call me Nim. I am a second degree High Priestess in the Wiccan tradition of the Wise tradition, and I am a tarot reader, a psychic, and I'm studying astrology in general, and I have been for many years, and I'm really excited about today's topic.
Awesome. So, how are you enjoying Gemini season so far? It's been kind of intense for me.
It has
How's it been
been
for you?
it's been, I love Gemini season in general because it's the time of just talking and getting out there and adventures. The sun is high, ideas are flowing, everybody's sort of in this creative space, but I also feel like everybody's also in their like creative angst at the same time. And so that's what I've been
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah,
traveling
creative
through, but
angst is a really good keyword for today's episode, I think, too. Because yeah, you're right. Like everyone's feeling very social and very communicative, but then there's like it feels like everyone's just talking over each other a little bit, or like there's so much going
yeah.
on that I can't decide like which thing to go to, which person to hang out with, which like podcast episode to listen
Yeah.
to. It's all a lot. It's very stimulating.
It's like the opposite of winter completely. Like
Yes,
it's the
and
opposite.
exactly. We're
Yeah.
at the end of Gemini season is the summer solstice. And so it's literally been 6 months since the winter solstice. And so it's
Yeah, you
kind
can
of
definitely feel that.
reflecting, it's that mirror image. Gemini is the opposite of Sagittarius, so it's mirroring Sagittarius season with like kind of that opposing energy. So yeah, we're definitely in the opposite of winter.
Yeah, well, and when we're in winter, we're like, oh, it's so nice to have a rest, but we're also kind of like, oh, I feel kind of, bored or whatnot. But now it's just like
Isolated.
yeah, yeah, and now it's like balls to the wall, almost overstimulation. It's and now we're like, oh man, I miss winter. But when we get to winter, we'll turn around and be like, man, I would just love some sunshine.
Yes. So Gemini season is associated with duality, communication, and versatility. It's represented by the symbol of the twins. And this twin archetype embodies the complexity of human nature. And, it's not necessarily like always two separate people, but it's the way that you can be of two minds within yourself. And so it's the interplay of contrasting forces within us is like the twins of Gemini is, yes, it's about socializing with other people and connecting with others, but it's also about kind of this contrast and complexity that happens within our own minds where we can be of two minds or we can see things from multiple perspectives just even within ourselves.
So Gemini teaches us the power of communication and the exchange of ideas. We have to take all of these ideas that are in our head and we have to like be able to somehow transmit those ideas to other people. And so that's communication. Um, so the archetype of Gemini is often related to people who are quick-witted, curious, and adaptable. They thrive on Our Gemini people thrive on intellectual stimulation and are very adept at processing information from multiple perspectives. So the archetype of Gemini encourages us to embrace our own curiosity, engage in meaningful dialogue, and remain open to new experiences and new ideas and things we hear from other people. And there's also this energy of like duality is about balance, right? We have to um, take other people's thoughts or ideas or opinions in when we are deciding something. Our choices are influenced by the ideas of other people. So we find balance by listening to others, and hopefully and then partly it's about like influencing other people to make choices based on what we think. Like the power of communication is that I can talk to someone else and potentially like change their mind about something or get them to agree with me. So there's this energy of Gemini that kind of can rub people the wrong way because it feels manipulative, because it is, because manipulation is like changing something in your favor, right? And that's what we're doing most of the time when we communicate with people. Like the purpose
Yeah,
of communication also often, and it's not like, it doesn't always have to be like manipulation in the sense of like the negative way of manipulation, but just like influencing someone to change something in your favor is manipulation. And that's not always a bad thing, right? Like
100%.
convincing
Yeah,
someone to go to dinner with me at this place that I like to go eat, it's not necessarily like a harmful form of manipulation. Not always.
yeah, 100%. And I believe in positive manipulation, and it's a very fine line because when you are manipulating somebody, good or bad, it takes a lot of assumptions, and so there's a lot of room for error in that. But I do think that like you can be a positive force of good, and that takes positive manipulation.
Right, right. Sometimes that influencing someone is not necessarily always negative or mean-hearted. Like sometimes it's for their good. We want to convince someone that like, hey, I think that that thing you're doing looks dangerous and I'm worried about your safety, so I think maybe you
Yeah,
should not do that or do it a different way,
yeah.
you know? So that's kind of some of this duality of Gemini, is we recognize that like within communication there is an inherent like manipulation in using any type of communication. And we have to keep that within balance and be wise about how we use that communication, because we do have the power to influence others with our communication. So are we doing that wisely? Are we doing that responsibly? So these are all good, great questions for just Gemini season in general. I'm
Hmm.
feeling it like there's so much happening in Gemini right now as we record this episode. Today is the new moon in Gemini. And so the moon and the sun are together in Gemini. Venus is also right there with the moon and sun in Gemini in conjunction. And then we also have Mercury and Jupiter in Gemini. So we have a ton of Gemini energy right now. So supercharged Gemini season.
Yeah, it's like the Council of
So
Elrond up there.
oh yeah, everybody's hanging out in Gemini. So
Yeah,
it's
everybody's
very
like, let's all get together. Yeah, and that's what it feels like too, because I feel like everybody's sort of got all these things going on, and yeah, Absolutely.
Yeah, everybody's at the round table and they're like yelling over each other about their ideas of what we should do next.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter and Mercury and Venus and the moon and the sun, and they're just all like, but they're all also enjoying each other's company, I think.
Yeah, it's a good party. It's a good
It's a
party.
great party. So in my episodes, I talk about the decans, and these are subdivisions of the signs. There's 30 degrees in every sign, and the decans are divisions of 10 degrees. So there's the first decan, which is the first 10 degrees. The second decan is the middle 10 degrees. And then the last decan is the last 10 degrees of the sign. And so currently the sun and the moon are together in the second decan, so in between 10 degrees to the 19th degree. I think today they were conjoined at 16 degrees Gemini, so they're still within that second decan. So each decan is kind of sub-ruled by a planet. So the entire sign of Gemini is ruled by Mercury. But then there is a subdivision of each decan having a ruling planet. So you can think of that as like a shift manager. If the sign of Gemini is divided into 3 shifts, then there's a different planet ruling over each of those shifts. While Mercury is still like the big boss of the whole, it's like the whole sign. The shift manager is different depending on what decan we're in. So in this middle decan, in the middle 10 degrees of Gemini, the subruler is Mars. And so this is, I think, again, one of the reasons that people have a difficult time dealing with people who are embodying a lot of Gemini energy is because a lot of Gemini people will naturally also be embodying not just Mercury, but also Mars energy, because Mars rules over the very middle of the sign of Gemini. So that's what we're kind of looking at today as we talk about this second decan of Gemini. It is sub-ruled by the planet Mars. And I invited you onto the show today because you have Mars in Gemini.
I do, and it's
In
one
your
of my
birth
signs
chart.
I'm most familiar with.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear some more about that from your perspective, but just I'm going to just give our
Yeah.
listeners just a very basic overview first. So Mars is considered a very powerful and assertive planet that is associated with energy, motivation, and the pursuit of individual desires. Like Venus is what we desire, but Mars is like how we're gonna go out and get what we desire, right? It's the pursuit, the thing that's gonna make us chase after what we desire or defend what we desire that we already have. So it's pursuit of desires, it is defensive and assertive, and it's named after the Roman god of war, and it represents courage, vitality, and a strong determination to take action. Like you can look at Mars in your chart and see how that this is how you assert yourself. This is how you pursue your goals, and this is how you express your passions. So Mars can be seen as the planet of our basic animal instincts and our drives for survival. Like it's the thing that activates when you are in survival mode and you need to fight or flight. That's kind of related to your Mars. And as well as just the motivational force that energizes us to like push through a challenge and have the courage to face a problem. Like the thing that makes you actually get out of bed in the morning because I've got a problem to solve or I have a job to do. Um, you know, that's kind of your Mars. And the more passionate that we feel about something, the more driven we are to fight for that thing, to act for that thing, or to protect that thing. And so Mars can symbolize just like this very proactive, motivational force, right? And this protective, courageous force. But it can also symbolize where we are very aggressive. Like, the more passionate you are about something, the more you're gonna like aggressively defend that stance or belief, or aggressively protect that thing that you value. Um, or like, you know, in the term of like soldiers, like the more a soldier like believes in what he's fighting for, the harder he's gonna fight, right? And so Mars is kind of like also our source of aggression or anger, our competitive nature, our ability to be combative. And so therefore, this can be destructive and harmful if it is not wielded carefully. Like, you have to be really careful about how you use your Mars energy in general. And just because it's like having a sharp knife. Like, we have these tools that we use that are very good and helpful, but if we run around and swing it around willy-nilly, then we can hurt ourselves or hurt someone else, right? So Mars is definitely a part of ourselves that we have to like use with caution and mindfulness, but also it's usually like a very impulsive part of us that we don't know. Like, we're not always aware of it. It's very impulsive. So Mars in Gemini is like potentially using our words and our thoughts and our communication as weapons, right? It's definitely this ability to like wield words and thoughts and ideas in a combative way. Because when we look at Mars and then combine it with Gemini, which is that, you know, kind of can be manipulative energy that we were talking about before, then Mars has a brand new kind of weapon, right? And I'm not saying that Mars in Gemini is bad, but I'm saying this can be wielded in a way that is
100%.
can be very damaging, right?
Oh,
It's almost like
100%.
yeah, it's almost like Mars in Gemini like really understands like this mental warfare.
Yeah.
Like I was picturing like I don't know if I saw it in a movie or I read about it in a book or something, but it's just the concept of like the enemy like army is camped out and they're not too far away and they're not attacking you, but they're like beating their drums and like playing loud music all night long. And so the soldiers that are here like on the other side, like they're not getting any sleep and
Mm-hmm.
they are getting like more and more anxious. And nothing's even happening. Like, there's no weapons being lodged at them, but there is, and it's this psychological warfare.
Right.
Like, Mars and Gemini understands this, like, if I wear my enemy down psychologically and mentally, then I will have an advantage over them when it is time to attack. Right. And so that's one aspect of Mars. In Gemini, I think that's important to point out and discuss is just this kind of like ability to use words as weapons and have like this kind of psychological warfare. And we've all interacted with some kind of Gemini person, whether they have Mars in Gemini or not, when people are like embodying this Gemini energy in a very projective way. they can be putting on this kind of Mars aspect of Gemini. Because it's helped us understand Gemini more too. Like
Right.
Mars ruling the middle decan of Gemini helps us understand some of the nature of Gemini is very like combative and aggressive. um, and we don't always
Conflict forward.
necessarily associate that with Gemini, but yeah, like there's definitely a using communication as a weapon or psychological warfare aspect of like the Gemini archetype. So I'm going to look at my notes really quick, and then I want to hear what you feel about Mars in Gemini or what you've experienced. So from my notes, I have we find the archetype of an active mind that is constantly searching for answers or sometimes even searching for problems. Mars loves to have a problem to solve or some kind of conflict to confront. Like Mars wants to be active, Mars wants to be winning. And so Mars will be constantly looking for a problem to solve or some kind of confrontation to win. And in Gemini, it's all in the mind. So there's constantly like this active mind that's searching for problems to solve or searching for answers. And this may result in an overactive mind that has trouble resting or relaxing. And then there's a motivation to be constantly learning new things, engaging in debates, and taking on multiple projects simultaneously. And that can be really excellent for pursuing intellectual challenges, enhancing your communication skills, exploring diverse interests, like always mentally like on the go and learning new things. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that that can be tiring, like, and overwhelming. Like, our mind needs to rest sometimes, but Mars doesn't like to rest. And then this restlessness and this overactiveness of the mind can lead to maybe like a scattered mind, like scatterbrain, having too many interests, having too many like fires burning in the kitchen at once, and then you lose track of things. So it's agile and energetic, but can become like overly distracted or unfocused. And like I feel like I'm describing it in a very negative way, but like I think there are strengths to this too, because the
Oh yeah.
agility and versatility of the Mars in Gemini makes people like excellent at problem solving. But it's like looking for problems to solve all the time, even if there's not necessarily a problem that needs to be
Yeah.
solved, that I think can be the problem. So as you have Mars and Gemini in your birth chart, I'd love to hear like what are your some of your thoughts and feelings about that placement in your chart.
Yeah, so like you said, I do have Mars and Gemini, and it's, when you're first looking at your chart, it's one of those things you look at and you go, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." And for me, it's really where my ADHD is in my chart almost. I always like to say that I'm great at starting things, terrible at finishing them. That comes from my Mars and Gemini because I move on to the next thing. I'm constantly turning. The benefits of this is that I have a wide variety of skills, but not a lot of product, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
I can, my mind is extremely fast and sharp and can do many things at once, but the struggle is creating something from start to finish and creating something that really took stamina of intellect, which I can intellectually do it, but the stamina to keep up the focus on it, my Mars and Gemini challenges very, very often. And you
Right.
talk about that restless mind. It's, as I wake up, I'm thinking about the 50 things I'm going to do or I need to do. As I'm going to sleep, I'm thinking about those things. As I'm supposed to be resting or leisuring or just being still, that is a challenge in itself, because that Mars and Gemini is looking for that next thing to solve, finish, challenge, whatnot.
Right.
And so when we're describing it, it can sound like combative, can sound like a bad thing, but for me, combative is, I have ADHD, which comes with what is it? It's called justice sensitivity, right? And so for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's if there's an injustice of some kind, I want to fix the balance. I want to right the wrong. I want to run in and whatnot. And my Mars and Gemini can be great for those things when it's called for. But if I'm constantly on alert for a battle, for a challenge, a problem, then my brain never goes to sleep. It never rests. It never recuperates. And it's so important to have those resting times, to have those winters so that our brain can cool off and heal. We do most of our healing of our body while we're asleep.
Yeah.
So if we're constantly awake and thinking, etc., we never are, and we're only getting our healing when we're asleep. There's not a balance there. So Mars and Gemini challenges me in a lot of ways, but they've made me the best of what I am as well. To have that
Yeah.
fire, to be able to
Certainly.
explode with creativity and manifest something that connects with people. The Gemini aspect is, I'm not a physical builder, but I can run into a room and use my voice to get a job done. You know what I mean? And it's not me yelling at people, it's me connecting with somebody, the positive manipulation, going, hey, I need help getting XYZ done, and it's going to benefit you in XYZ way. Let's do it together. Those
I have
I'm
totally witnessed this part of you. Like I have memories of you being able to come into a room and kind of unite people and get people like connected. Like people can be like having a bunch of different side conversations, and you can come in and be like, okay, here's the activity that we're going to do now, or here's the thing that we all need to work on, and everyone just is like following that lead. And so
Yeah.
Mars can be so like motivating and takes charge. It's the general coming into the room, and a good general is motivating and like
Mhm.
has the
Mhm.
respect of the soldiers that are working under them. And so it's really like the ability to get people like thinking on the same page and um connected and
Mm.
instead of like scattered. And so that's a really great side of that Mars in Gemini is the ability to take that kind of scattered Gemini energy and just be like, hey, let's all work together on this cause. Let's all work together on this project. And it's
Yeah.
a great quality, I think, for a priestess to have, because you can go into your community and just command that leadership to get people where it's not necessarily like, look at me, but like, hey, look at what we can do together if we
Yeah.
kind of focus on one thing for a minute. Look at what the
Yeah.
benefit of us working in unison is, and look at what the benefit of listening to each other and putting our minds together is. So that's a beautiful way to reflect on Mars and Gemini as a positive thing.
Well, yeah, because I know that my strength is I can cut through the bystander effect. And for those that may not know this, a bystander effect is when, and it's used in like major crises, right? Somebody's having a major heart attack and everybody sort of freezes and nobody knows what to do, who's leading, and you just need one voice in the crowd to go, you call 911, you go do this.
Yeah,
Sally, you're going to look, and it's not that that person that is using the voice is going to have all the solutions for what to do next and they're going to fix this thing, but it's important to have a voice in the crowd to get the crowd to go in the same direction, not even the right direction, the same
right.
direction.
No, that just
you
made
know.
me think of this time that I think there was like this very Mars and Gemini moment that I had, and I was at a festival once and I was getting ready to like go with my friend to watch this music show, but as we were walking on the trail, this woman fell down in front of us and we like heard the snap in her ankle. like
Mm,
like we heard, we really, I was like, oh crap. So we went over to her, like and like got her seated on the ground, and I was like, I know exactly what to do. And I told my friend, like, you stay here. And I knew like right
mm-hmm,
around the corner where the I knew that there was someone with a walkie-talkie that could contact the
mm-hmm,
medics, that was like right around the corner, but I needed to like go there. And so but I knew exactly where to go and what to do. And so instead of just standing around being like, oh gosh, what, because there was just a
yeah,
crowd of people standing around. So I was
yeah,
like, I ran like just like a short distance away and was just like, hey, I need this person with a walkie-talkie. You have a medical kit. You have knowledge of like how to field dress an injury, because I knew these
yeah,
people. So I was like, you, and you, we need you over here right now. Like, you get on the
yeah,
walkie-talkie, you get the first aid kit, and
yeah,
you come because you know how to field dress an injury, and just like brought these people back. I had someone bring uh like an umbrella to put shade over her because she was sitting in the direct sunlight, but we couldn't move her. And it was just
yeah,
very quickly like telling people, what to do next, and kind of
yeah.
directing the energy. And
Well, and
so,
it's
so yeah,
amazing the
I think
speed
that
of how
that's a good
fast your brain
example.
flies. Yeah,
Right. That's a good example of like the benefit of Mars in Gemini can respond very quickly and problem solving. Like, its problem
right.
solving skills are fantastic.
Yeah,
But for the internal experience, when there's not necessarily a problem
right.
that can be solved quickly like that, this is where you get into anxiety and despair,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. What?
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 And so
Yeah.
this is where we're going with this, is the tarot card that is related to the middle decan of Gemini, which is severed by Mars, is the Nine of Swords. And so it's just one of the most depressing cards in the tarot deck.
It's
And
brutal.
it's for people who can't necessarily picture the cards in their head, this is the one that has a figure sitting on their bed. They're like sitting up, they've got their head in their hands, like their face is covered up with their hands, and there's nine swords above them. And it's definitely giving the vibe of like they're being kept awake by these like distressing, despairing thoughts, like they're experiencing some kind of mental anguish that is causing them to have insomnia, right? And so this is a card of Gemini and it is a card of Mars. So we can kind of understand this card better by examining, like, what if this card were to represent Mars in Gemini? And I don't want to limit people to only thinking of this card as being relevant when Mars is in Gemini, but it is a card of Gemini and it is a card of Mars. So we need to combine these two archetypes to fully interpret this tarot card. So some of the key words that I have for the Nine of Swords: um, agony, anxiety, despair, distress, fear, guilt, shame, insomnia, mental anguish, regret, remorse, self-blame, and worry. This is not a fun card, right?
It is not fun. It's like the
It is
opposite
not
of
a
Nine of
fun card,
Cups.
and this is kind of that side of Mars and Gemini that we were talking about before that can be very like, if your mind is always kind of actively searching for a problem to solve, then you're not letting yourself sleep. And so the swords in the tarot are related to air, the element of air. So the element of air is our minds, our thoughts, and our ideas. Um, it's the search for truth. It's the concept of having a sharp mind or a sharp tongue. Thoughts and ideas can kind of cut to the heart of the matter. Words can be used as weapons. That's why like swords are all about that air element. So in the tarot, the suit of swords most often relates to things that are not necessarily physically or literally happening to us, but to what we think is happening. They relate to our state of mind, what we believe, um, the way that we are interpreting something, or what we are learning from our experiences. And so knowing that the swords are about the element of air, and the air is about like what's going on in our minds and in our heads, and then knowing that this is a Mars card and a Gemini card, we're like, oh, okay, this Nine of Swords image is the result of like having that overactive mind that is aggressively attacking. Like your mind is in attack mode because Mars is there, and Gemini's in problem solving mode, and it's just like always doing that. And if that goes on too much, then you have like these anxiety attacks or insomnia, and like these moments of extreme like remorse or self-blame and worry that's just like keeping you awake, and it's very distressing. So this card represents sleepless nights and the weight of troubling thoughts. It highlights the impact of fear and stress on your mental well-being, and often stemming from guilt, regret, or a sense of impending doom. Like Mars is that part of us that's constantly like ready for battle. And we know that soldiers get like this fatigue from needing to be constantly like vigilant and watching for enemies. And then that can develop into like paranoia, right? So the lessons of the Nine of Swords involves confronting these anxieties and recognizing that a lot of the suffering is like self-inflicted because it's coming from, inside your own thoughts. The call's coming from inside the house. And so recognizing like when you're having these moments, if you've ever been up late at night having insomnia and like a literal panic attack, like you know that you're not literally in danger in that moment, and you just have to like accept it, like, okay, my head, my thoughts are like piling up and freaking out, and I need to like find a way to manage this stress so that I can relax again, right? So when we remember that this is a card of Gemini and a card of Mars, then we can remember that a lot of what we are feeling conflicted or embattled about is likely within our own mind and our mental perspective. Things might not actually be as bad as they seem, but we need to give our mind
Stoicism.
we need to give our mind and body a rest. Like it's those moments when like you're just so overwhelmed that you can't think straight anymore, and all of the things that you've been trying to like you can't solve any problems anymore because your mind is so overworked that you can't see the solution to anything anymore. And the solution to that is rest, take a break, let someone else solve the problem, right? You don't
Or
have to
just finding
be.
peace that there doesn't have to be a problem. You don't yet to let it go, to not create and manifest the next drama so that you feel important and useful and loved. Like, and this is me talking to myself, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And now I've needed to hear that. Like the sun has been going through this middle decan of Gemini for like the past week. So it's been in this realm that's subruled by Mars, and I've literally been having like just panic attacks out of the blue. Um, and just noticing within myself, like, okay, I'm just like taking on like this problem that's not actually a problem. It's definitely like the feeling that something is a really big problem because I'm making it a big problem in my head, but it's not necessarily actually that big of a problem. And so I've been noticing that, and I've been like, okay, well, we are in this Nine of Swords time period, so that makes sense. And kind of giving myself the grace of like, I can rest. I don't have to be constantly busy. I don't have to be constantly like filling my mind with more stuff. Because when we're overwhelmed with too much information and so many problems, and then we take on the burden of solving those problems ourselves or sorting through all of this information all by ourselves, of course we get caught up in feelings of despair and anguish, right? Mars wants to be the hero and the winner, and Gemini is a sign of social connection and teamwork. So that's where the conflict comes in because Gemini says, let's work together, um,
Yeah.
which is contradictory to what Mars wants. Mars wants to win. And when you're in
Yeah,
a
Mars
team,
wants to
there's not
go. He wants to
necessarily
lead and
a
go.
winner. Right.
Yeah.
There's not necessarily a winner in a team, like the whole team can win together. And I think that that's what the Mars in Gemini needs to remember is this isn't about the individual winning, it's about the group winning. It's about the collective winning, right?
Well, and I just had a
And
little
so
epiphany
Mars
about that
can,
as you're talking about it. So
yeah. So with
it's
Mars,
not just, oh, I'm so sorry, but it's not just about,
good.
oh, it's so interesting what you just said. It's not about winning over, it's not about just being the only winner, but then also it's not about the only person being in despair because you can kind of be like, well, I'm taking all these problems and nobody else is taking on all these problems. And, oh, that's
Right.
interesting. Sorry. That was so fascinating.
Right, because the solution to the Nine of Swords card is this person that's in the image on the card where they're in bed and they're filled with dread and shame and guilt and, overwhelm and anxiety. They need to talk to someone. That's the solution to the Nine of Swords is
Mm,
they need to talk to someone. And so when they keep this all to themselves and take on the burden all themselves, then yeah, there's no visible solution and there's just despair because like, oh my gosh, I can't solve this problem by myself. I'm failing at solving this problem, right?
yeah.
And that fills us with shame and guilt and not good feelings. But if instead we take our problem and we share that burden with someone else, sharing being the true like Gemini
Right.
keyword, and we share that problem with someone else and we ask for help or we ask for someone else to share the burden with us, then we are suddenly allowed to like rest and we realize we're not alone and that we don't have to solve all of our problems by ourselves. And that's when like the true blessings of that Gemini Mars can come through is when we get back into the teamwork and back into the connection with others. Because the Gemini tarot card is the lovers,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a card of connection. That's a card of making choices based on connection with other people. And the Nine of Swords cards is one person by themselves. So they're disconnected from the Gemini lovers image. And the solution is they need to get back to that other person and talk about this problem with them instead of trying to take it all on by themselves. And so I think that like the, Gemini and Mars combination can cause this like Mars nature is to take on everything and solve the problem all by myself.
Right.
But the
Yeah.
Gemini solution is you don't need to do anything by yourself. The solution is teamwork. The solution is communication, talking about your problems with other people. The swords are about communication. If you're sitting there at nighttime and just like have all these thoughts tumbling around in your head by yourself, you're not going to find peace of mind just by overthinking all of this stuff. You're going to find the peace of mind by talking it out, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's very interesting in astrology, the combination of Mars in Gemini. Mars in Gemini is called the Lord of Despair and Cruelty, which is like
Jesus.
where the imagery of this
What?
card comes through. And I mean,
Wow, that's
that's like,
powerful.
again, getting back to like someone, maybe if you get this card, sometimes this is like someone's been doing some psychological warfare on you.
Right.
Like, why do
Yeah.
you
Something,
believe that you're such a
somebody's not letting
failure?
you sleep. Yeah.
Yeah, so why do you believe that you're such a failure? Why do you believe that like all of these problems are yours and yours alone? Is it because someone's been telling you that? Like,
Right.
has someone been
Right.
attacking you mentally and causing you? Sometimes you're the one that's attacking yourself. And that's why that Lord of Despair and Cruelty is like, is it you or is it someone else? And we got to figure that out, but we can't solve this problem by ourselves. Like, if you're being attacked by the Lord of Despair and Cruelty, this is not something that you can get out of alone. You need to talk to a therapist, you need to talk to your friends, you need to talk to the people that you trust, and like either talking just to process all these thoughts and feelings with someone, which is why like talk therapy can help us with anxiety and depression, or talking for the very logistical reason of like, I can't solve this problem and I need someone else's perspective to help me understand this problem.
Can you check your mic real quick, Liliana?
Yes,
It went
sometimes
ro-
this
it
goes
went
out.
robot voice on us, which I was enjoying.
It did that to me last time too. I think just after like 40
Oh,
minutes of
certain. Oh,
talking, it's
got you,
like,
got you. Well, I like it.
I don't know why it's doing that, but we'll just deal with it. It's fine. Hopefully it'll go back to normal in a minute.
Okay, no worries. I just didn't want to be afterwards. You'd be like, why didn't you say anything? That's my Mars in Gemini. I'm like, oh, there's a problem to solve. I better say
Yes, there's a
something.
problem to
See
solve.
something, say
Quick.
something.
I love it. I love it. So, hopefully, since you have this Mars at Gemini in your chart, you can recognize when you start having these Nine of Swords moments and have a reminder of like, okay, when I start to have those Nine of Swords moments of despair, that's when I need to like lean into the Gemini communication
Yeah.
and partnership and connection more, rather than leaning more into the Mars, solve it myself, combat, fight everything.
Right, right. It's tiring. It's hard.
I feel for you, like that is a very powerful place to have Mars, but it's also a very challenging place to have Mars. Um,
Yeah.
we are going to experience Mars in Gemini this year. Mars will be in Gemini from July 20th through September 4th. So you'll have a Mars return this summer, and everyone collectively will get to experience the Nine of Swords. Yay!
Yay.
Um, Hopefully we can all
Your
remind
voice
each other.
fixed. You're normal again.
Yay! Hopefully we can all remind each other to be mindful and to not isolate ourselves. I think when we're having those Nine of Swords moments, the tendency might be to isolate, but as I said, like the resolution and the therapy that is needed for the Nine of Swords moments is connection and sharing. So I
Yeah,
think
I
it'll be really
absolutely I
important for
relate to
us.
that.
It'll be really important for us to like notice when we're having these overwhelming feelings and these despairing moments or this anxiety, and reminding ourselves and reminding each other to like reach out, connect. You're not alone. We can solve this problem better together. So I like
Yeah,
to give people some introspective questions to journal with, but go ahead and share if you had something else to share, just
yeah.
overall what
Well,
you think.
I just wanted to add one last little thing to this, that
Uh-huh.
tying on to what you're saying is, um, I personally have felt relief in the harder aspects of Mars and Gemini through connecting with friends like you, Liliana. Liliana and
Mm,
I occasionally message each other and go, we need a friend check-in. This isn't about business. This isn't about trying to solve something. It is just a communication check-in, a little touch point of
yes.
how
Just that.
actually are you? Yeah.
Yes.
And
And I
I'm
appreciate
not
that
good at
so
those with
much.
other people. I'm not good at those, but you have given me some really good practice opportunities, and this discussion highlights that that is how I help myself in those moments. And so I appreciate you. I appreciate you a lot.
Hmm. So we can all experience this Nine of Swords energy throughout life, whenever. It doesn't have to be only when Mars is in Gemini. Um, the Obviously, like, you can give yourself a reading and get this card at any time, or we can just be having these moments of like, I feel anxious, I'm having insomnia, I'm overwhelmed, and then we can reframe that as like, oh, I'm having a Nine of Swords moment. And then start thinking about like Mars and Gemini to help us like resolve that problem. And then we can also kind of experience this energy of Mars and Gemini anytime that any of the planets are moving through that middle 10 degrees of Gemini, because even if Mars is not there, Mars is the ruler of that section. So anytime that any planets moving through that middle section of Gemini, there's going to be like more of this Mars and Gemini energy coming up just in the general vibe of life, which is why we really need to be aware of it during Gemini season, because we've just had the Sun and Venus coming through there, um, the moon there now with the new moon. Venus and the Sun will be moving out of this section in a few days, but then Mercury will be coming in, and later in the year, Jupiter will be coming into this section of the zodiac too. So there's going to be a lot of times to just be aware of this energy. So I have just some journaling questions for introspection, because some people like to maybe journal about this, and you can journal based on transits or based on what's in your chart or based on just drawing this tarot card. What fears or worries are currently occupying my mind, and how can I address them constructively? How can I practice self-compassion and release feelings of guilt or regret? What steps can I take to improve my mental well-being and find peace of mind? How can I transform my anxieties into opportunities for personal growth and resilience? And how can I channel my increased energy and curiosity into meaningful projects and learning experiences? I think reflecting back on like the positive side of this Mars in Gemini, it's like there's a lot of power in that combination to have this increased curiosity and increased drive for learning and increased drive for um like better, more communication, more connection, more learning, right? So I think if we actively engage with that, but also we have to learn to let ourselves rest. Rest is sacred. Um, is there anything else you want to add? Just like ending with like, what is a positive aspect of this Mars in Gemini combination that we can take with us as we leave?
Mars and Gemini is a very versatile, empowered, creative space to be in and can create great change with others.
Yes, I think the with others part is key because the way that
Yeah,
Mars and Gemini succeeds in being that very positive creative force is when it's working with others and connecting and listening and reflecting back from others rather than just trying to like be the individual winning like master, right? All right. I appreciate you so much and thank you so much for coming and recording this episode with me. I am so excited to like continue experimenting with bringing guests onto the show and hopefully we'll figure out that weird robot voice sound and I don't know what causes that,
it's
but oh,
temporary.
it's temporary. It goes away. It was in the last episode too, but it only lasted for a couple minutes and then it went away. So, oh well. All right. Thanks again
Thank
for
you so
everyone
much.
tuning in and listening. Thank you, N'Mier. Is there a place where you wanted to direct people if they want to find you for a tarot card reading or anything?
Absolutely. You can find all of my information via Instagram. It's the same tag as in stereo, N'Mier Laveau HPS. And I would love to connect with any of you. This is awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
All right. Thank you so much. And as always, you can connect with me on hestiasmuse.net. That's my website. I have a Patreon, www.patreon.com/hestiasmuse, where you can find written transcript of these tarot podcast episodes, as well as a bunch of other astrology content that I am constantly creating. I have Gemini ruling my fifth house. That's the house of like creativity. And so I love to write and use words to like express and share knowledge. And to me, that's very fun. So anyways, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining me. I am super excited to do it again sometime. And I hope y'all have a great Gemini lunar month and a great summer.